A few minutes with Phil. So I just got done studying the book of Genesis, or at least having a look at the book of Genesis, and I wrote down some notes, and I want to share the notes with you. Genesis is Greek for origins or source or beginnings. Moses was thought to have written the book of Genesis in about 1450 to 1410 BC. That's 3,500 years ago. That's a long, long time. Theologians and scholars of days gone by have done us a huge favor by breaking Genesis down into 50, count them, chapters. That's 1,533 verses and 38,267 words. Genesis spans more time than any other book in the Bible. Genesis covers more time than the other 65 books in the Bible combined. Wow. Okay, let's get into that a little bit more. There are 4,100 years of recorded biblical history. Over half, 2,286 years, is in Genesis. And the rest of the years in the Bible, 1,814 years, is covered in Exodus through the Revelation. Two of the 2,286 years recorded in Genesis are covered in chapters 1 through 11. Remember, it's 50 chapters, so wow. Genesis divides itself into 3 geographical settings. All right, let me see if I can mispronounce this. The Fertile Crescent. Yeah, that spans about 2,000 years. That's chapter 1 to 11. And then chapter 12 to 36 is Canaan or Israel. That's 193 years. And finally, the last chapters 37 to 50 is in Egypt. That covers about 93 years. Chapter 1 through 11 lets us know why God chose Israel, and chapter 12 through 50 tells us how God chose Israel as his chosen people. I'm going to give you the big why. Why is it that God chose these people? Well, to call out a people to be holy. Holiness. Set apart. Set apart for the purposes of God. Okay. If you want to break the book of Genesis down into events and people, you can do it this way. Chapter 1 through 11 has 4 events. Chapters 12 through 50 have 4 people, or 4 main people. Let me give them to you. Okay, first the 4 events. The first 4 events in chapters 1 through 11 are the creation, the fall, the flood, and the tower. That's the infamous Tower of Babel. And after that, it breaks down into 4 different people. And the 4 different people are kind of the patriarchs, or the founding fathers of the Jewish people. And those are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then we follow the story of one of Jacob's 12 sons, Joseph, from chapter 37 through 50. The book of Genesis has what's known as the Abrahamic covenant. And it's first given in chapter 12, and then it's ratified in chapter 15. Now, I need to talk to you just for a minute or two about what's the Abrahamic covenant. God gives Abraham this promise. It's a 3-part promise that he would fulfill throughout history. And here's the 3-part promise. promise is that his descendants would become a great nation. Oh, I'm sorry. That they would have a land unto themselves, that they would become a great nation, and that they'd be blessed. They'd be a blessed people. There is a lot of beginnings in the book of Genesis. Kind of makes sense. So here's some beginnings from the book of Genesis. Well, the universe, okay. Marriage, okay. Life, that makes sense. Redemption, that makes sense. Sin, yep. Prophecy, yep. Mankind, death, language, the Sabbath, the family, and sacrifices. The idea of sacrifice. I want to get to this word right here. Sin. Sin, sin, sin. 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 I always like to share this with people. I once read something that kind of struck me. It said, if you take all the world religions, and if you do any studying on the world religions at all, you'll find that, frankly, there's a lot of differences in them. When people kind of say, all roads lead, that doesn't even make any sense. But there is one common thread in all world religions, and that is this idea of sin. All world religions have this idea that people do things that they know is wrong. Instinctively, consciously, by the law, they recognize it's wrong, but they do it anyway. It's this idea of sin. So I'm sharing this to say that it's not just this Christian concept. It's this concept that we all seem to understand. Once upon a time, I was talking to a friend of mine. He was an atheist. He didn't believe in God, but he said something that kind of struck me. He said, even though I don't believe in God, it kind of blows my mind that if you go to any country, the laws are basically the same. In other words, murder is wrong in every country. Stealing is wrong in every country. Adultery is wrong in any country. It doesn't matter. He said, it just strikes me that it doesn't matter what country you go to. The laws are kind of basically the same as far as morality, right, wrong, and all that stuff. Okay. I'm losing my voice. I think it's allergies. I hope it's allergies. I'm not sure. Okay, so Genesis also covers, and I'm getting a little bit redundant here, but I need to do it anyway, the creation, the call of Abraham, the fall of man, the promises of Messiah, the spread of civilization, Joseph in Egypt, and the flood. I didn't even have that in order. That doesn't quite make sense. Anyway, I do think I should talk about this. There are messianic predictions in the book of Genesis. In other words, although it's the first book of the Bible, and although it's 1,500 years before the Christ would come or the Messiah would come, already God is beginning to plant the seed to let everybody know that a Redeemer would come one day. We find this in chapter 3, verse 15. Christ is the seed of a woman. 425, he would be from the line of Seth. And 927, from the line of Shem. And finally, 12:3, he would be a descendant of Abraham. That's my notes from the book of Genesis. Thanks for spending a few minutes with Phil.